Kids, I'm back from the UK and wanted to say thank you very much to all those that participated in my adventure, both that traveled with me and that met me in the UK at some point and showed me around or showed me some hospitality or kindness or even a coffee and a conversation. Um, I will get into my UK trip at a later date. Right now, my mind is totally fried. I'm absolutely exhausted, and I can barely function. But I did want to say one thing, and I wanted to explain one thing to everyone. I'm very blessed to have a lot of very pleasant acquaintances and very nice casual friends, mostly from a distance, that seem generally to care about me and my well-being, and that is very touching. And on the other hand, I have one, two, three, four. I have a handful of very close friends, my total like inner circle, which, much like masturbation, feels comfortable and always seems to be there and work. I have another set, which is kind of the other hand, and although they are part of me, they're not quite as close and we're not quite as in contact. And although I know it is part of me and they are looking after me, it sometimes feels a bit like being molested from a stranger, which in a way can kind of be hot, but for the most part never quite finishes the job. Sorry for the reference. It's the best I can do after practically no sleep. So I posted something which I meant from the heart on Facebook while I was in Edinburgh, on my first night in Edinburgh / morning, that I felt like the loneliest person in the world and that I get used a lot. And I do. I have friends, but sometimes even having friends, you feel lonely. And in this particular case, I found myself in a situation where I felt completely alone, even though there were friends in proximity. And it wasn't my friend's fault, it was my fault. And I have been learning this lesson my whole life. I have people that constantly scream at me, particularly my inner five, constantly bitching at me that I am way too permissive with people, I'm way too generous with people, I allow myself to get used and abused, blah, 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 I shouldn't do that, and I don't need to do that, and I get constantly reminded and basically wailed on the subject. And I have my whole life, even starting with my parents, actually, that I'm just far too generous, I guess. And I know what it has to do with. It has to do with adopted child syndrome. It's a very classic case, and I have a very strong bond with adopted child syndrome. But I've been working on it, and for the most part, I've been doing a little bit better. However, a few times in my life, it's really gotten me in trouble. It's gotten me brutally raped a couple of times, literally. Once gang raped and nearly died, and the other time I got smacked over the back of the head while I wasn't looking, and raped terribly. And I've gotten in other situations where I felt like I was truly in danger. But past that, most of the time when people do horrible things, and even those that do things like rape me, karma takes care of it for me. They just absolutely wilt under the pressure of the karma, because I don't really do anything to deserve such shitty treatment. I go out of my way to be polite and nice and say thank you and please and generally mean it. And I try to make people around me, at least when I'm present, as comfortable as possible, as often as possible. And I realize that I'm batshit crazy, and I'm sure you'll hear more about that later, particularly from my friends that had to endure all my batshit craziness while I was in the UK. Sometimes I'm aware that I'm batshit crazy, and sometimes I just forget, and I forget how uncomfortable that can be, or how disturbing or upsetting it can be when you're dealing with somebody that's batshit crazy. So for my two dear friends that stuck it out, thank you so much, Robert and Misty. Thank you. Seriously, you turned it for me. It was great. The other thing is, I had some lovely friends in the UK that I met, and I want to thank you all for taking the time to honor me with your presence. And although I'm not going to get into any names, one of you actually helped me learn the lesson I've been trying to teach myself, and others have been trying to teach me for a long time. I got myself into a very unnerving, scary situation where I didn't know where I was. I didn't know anybody there. I didn't know how to get back to my hotel where I knew people, and I felt very abandoned and at some point kind of used, but mostly abandoned, kind of left to the wolves, so to speak, in this place. And it was painful. Sometimes being used doesn't really bother me because I know that karma will get them anyway. But sometimes it's very personal, and sometimes it's very painful, and I do have feelings. I'm a very emotional guy, for the most part. So I was very hurt, and that's why I posted what I posted. So I want you to all know it was just a few hours of agony, but 10 days, almost 11 days of absolute wonderful experiences and laughs and great memories and everything else. So it wasn't the end of the world, and I appreciate everyone who took the time to write or show concern, and appreciate everyone who tried to make up for it, or tried to counsel me through it, or in the close hand, the close proximity, the inner circle, who was still bitching at me harshly all the way home from the airport about it, and questioning me and re-questioning me and re-questioning me. Those are true friends, and I really appreciate that. I'll try to do better in the future, but I will say one last thing to all y'all that didn't go or participate in this particular adventure. Now, I sent out a general message to the world a few times starting last September. This trip's coming. It's going to be epic. Please join. And everyone got invited. And if you didn't, or you couldn't, or you wouldn't, you missed something wonderful. It was great. At some point on every day, there was something epically funny or wonderful or adventurous or new or interesting that happened every single day on this journey, starting at arrival at the airport. Seriously, no joke. This was like non-stop, like it was great. And for those of you that I reached out to personally to double check to see that you knew you got invited and you decided you weren't going anyway, you missed out. Sorry, you really missed out. You fucked up, actually, because it was great. It was truly great. So that's all I wanted to say. I will talk about my trip later when my mind is more clear and my tongue is a bit sharper. Right now I'm highly sedated so that I'll be able to sleep again and getting back into a normal pattern. So thank you very much, everybody, and a special thank you to my first class friend Peter, who makes traveling by train the most enjoyable first class experience ever. I have never seen faster service on BritRail than on the segment I traveled with Peter. Anyway, talk to you later.